What's going on, YouTube? Today we are sowing some vegetable seeds. The crazy thing about this is we're in upstate New York in the middle of January 15th, and the outside temperature right now is 18 degrees. I mean, a lot of people would say that's pretty crazy and that's way too early to start your seeds. But here at the Hans Home Living, we have a heated greenhouse. So we can do a lot of different things with our seeds. So today we're gonna go through the process of which type of vegetables we're starting, how we're gonna control the heating, the lighting, and the moisture to perfect germination. We'll go through the types of soil that we're doing, and we'll go through the whole process of how we're starting our seeds in the middle of January in New York. So, life's a garden. Let's go dig it. We're gonna be starting with 4 types of tomatoes. We're gonna be doing a aroma tomato. We love canning, period. And we love making our own homemade sauce. So Roma tomatoes, San Marzano tomatoes are perfect for making your homemade sauce. So we're gonna be growing a lot of these this season so we can can these for well into the next year and have plenty of time for the winter sauce making. Beefsteak tomatoes as well as cherry tomatoes. So those 4 tomatoes are very hardy plants that grow very well in a controlled atmosphere, which is going to be beneficial for us since we have a controlled atmosphere in our greenhouse. We're going to start with some lettuces as well. Some butter crunch lettuce, romaine lettuce, and oak leaf lettuce. Those are pretty hardy lettuces. We've had great success with those in the past. We'll do spinach and broccoli, and bok choy, some onion, and kale. And then also we're gonna grow some herbs. Start them in here. We use these for cooking all the time as well as for canning. So we're gonna grow some cilantro, rosemary, and basil. And then I forgot the last one is gonna be chives. So we'll start with chives. So all these vegetables right now are the ones we're starting here in the middle of January. Once we get to the middle of March, which are about our halfway point to our transplanting outdoor season, that's when we'll bring in all the other vegetables that we're going to be growing, as well as the ones that we're going to be planting directly in the ground. But today, this is what we're starting here in middle of January, so we can get some harvest going by May is the goal. So what we have here is our germination set. So we picked this up off Amazon. You can get these anywhere. We've had some good luck with these in the past. We just got a different variety of different ones. So this one is a 70 pod unit. So we got different rows, 7 by 10, as well as the watering tray. Once you get the seeds sowed, the soil in there, you put the lid on, put it underneath some light and heat, then you're good to go. Because the 3 most important things for a perfect germination are going to be heating, lighting, and moisture. Okay, so if you can control the heating, that's the biggest thing. Seeds want to germinate right around 70 to 80 degrees. So it fluctuates with per seed. So you have to definitely read the label of what you're using and just go off experience and what's worked for you in the past. So we'll put that in here, and then we'll put this out onto a heating mat that we got off Amazon as well, and put it underneath some LED grow lights that we just recently picked up. So we'll put those out there and let them germinate. Now, if you don't have a greenhouse, grow lights, heating mat, these work well in any window. So if you have a window that gets a lot of the south facing sun throughout the day, put it in there. You'll definitely see some germination results. But just keep in mind that if you're using a big set like this, each seed is going to germinate at a different process or a different speed. So make sure you're able to either remove a row once they germinate and they reach a certain point where you can transplant them into a bigger pot. Because if you just let them go, they're going to grow too far in the moisture, and you're just going to create a fungus or a disease inside that plant. So you want to make sure that you keep an eye on each plant as you're moving forward with that. So that's the 3-piece germination set that we use, and we have 5 of these because we're going to be growing a lot of vegetables this summer and a lot of flowers as well. So check back for our other videos as we're going to be making hanging baskets as well. Soil. So you don't want to just go grab any normal soil that's out there. You want to make sure it's a starter soil, meaning that it's very fine, it's very smooth, so that the seed has perfect opportunity to germinate. If you get a potting soil or just a garden soil, there's big chunks of wood chips in there sometimes that will just overtake the seed and not let them properly germinate. So you want to make sure that the soil is a starter soil, has plenty of nutrients in it. We're using a Miracle Grow starter set that we bought locally here at a big box store. So before you take your soil and you just dump it in here, you want to make sure a couple things first. Let's push this out of the way. What we like to do is grab a bowl, take some of your potting soil, dump it into the bowl first. a decent amount in there, enough to work with. What you want to do with the soil is feel it. Make sure it's nice and fluffy. There is a bit of moisture to it. You want to make sure that there is. Make sure there's no big particles in here, any of that kind of stuff. If it's dry, you want to add some water. Right now the soil is perfectly loose. It's nice and fluffy, but we're going to add a little bit of water to this just to get some moisture going in here. Okay. We're going to mix this all up just to make sure that every bit of the soil is nice and moist before we put it in here, so we don't have to overwater the containers. All right. So that looks pretty good. Okay. So what we're going to do is you're going to bring your tray, and you're just going to pour it right over. Dump it right over the top of this. Right? And then you just want to smooth this all out. Make sure you get it in every single pod. Now you don't want to go and force it all into each pod. You don't want to push down on it. You want to make sure this is nice and light. You don't want this condensed, okay? So pick up any extra that you have around here, fill in any extra pods. Okay, so now that your soil is evenly dispersed throughout your tray, it's not packed in too tough, it's nice and fluffy, laying on top, and it's ready to start sowing your seeds. Before you even start opening your seeds and doing that, the best thing to do is start to label them. So there's so many different labels out there, the wooden stakes, the plastic ones like we have. These are plastic, almost like a PVC material. They're wide flags, and we use a permanent waterproof Sharpie marker. And what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll write the actual vegetable that we're planting and the date. And we put these in before we even put in the seeds, so that this way we know what's germinating and what is, producing, in a sense, when it's time to start transplanting these out, so you don't get confused. Especially when you have a big tray and we're doing multiple vegetables in one tray. So let's get at it. Now that you have every row labeled and you know which plant is going to correlate to each row, you can see we kind of split this into half in a sense. So we're going to have 4 full rows of tomatoes, and then everything else splits off into either 4 rows or 3 rows, to fill out the rest of the tray. And as they germinate and they start to create the taller seedlings, we will pop them out and transplant them into bigger pots as we go. So just like the seed packets we discussed earlier in the back, it'll tell you exactly how long it should germinate under perfect conditions, as well as the planting depth. So each seed is going to be a little bit different. So make sure you're paying attention to that, because you can't just go through every single pod and put a 1/4 inch deep hole in there. That's not going to work out. And some pod, you're going to want a couple more seeds in there. Like when we get to the chives, when we put those in there, we're going to sprinkle them all in there so we get little seedlings all over, and we can transplant them all throughout the bigger pot. So we're going to go right into it, and we're going to go just lay out all the seeds per the sign. Put the needle on the record. Okay, so once you get all the seeds pretty much in contact with the soil, whether it's a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 of an inch down into the trays, you want to make sure that it's nice and in there and that each seed is seeded properly in each pod, that there's no floaters, and then just try to clean it up as best as you can. So once you have all the seeds in there, we go ahead and take another layer of the potting seed starter and just lightly sprinkle this over the top. And this one we're not going to pack in. We just want to make sure that all the seeds are covered and that they have perfect germination capabilities here. So we just want to make sure that all the seeds here get covered up. So make sure you get all corners of each pod. Make sure that the seeds are nicely squared away. Okay, and then we just kind of lightly tap this in just to make sure everything is good and it's good contact. Clean it up just a little bit here. And that's how you sow these seeds. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this, get the lid out, we're going to go out in the greenhouse and get this underneath the lights in the grow mat and the warm mats and get to it. Okay, so here we are. We're out here in the greenhouse right now. We got our germination tray all squared away, filled with seeds and soil, topped off. It's all labeled and ready to go. So the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to water this in nice and gentle. You don't want to flood this and have all the seeds just run out. But you also want to make sure that there's plenty of moisture inside this tray. So once you put that lid on it, you don't have to worry about it again. You shouldn't have to put any water in there. And if you do, that means your conditions are way too dry. You need to add more water there. But once you put the lid on top, you should see germination. You should not have to add any water to that. So what we'll do is we're going to water this in right now, put the lid on top, and then we'll set this aside, set it and forget it. And again, you just want to get everything saturated, but not too much. So I like to let the water set for a second, let the soil get a chance to absorb all the water. Let it just sit for a couple minutes, let it breathe. We also like to lift up and see if there's water in the bottom part of the tray. There's nothing yet, which means the soil is absorbing it. So we want to make sure that we're going to put enough fluid in here so that the bottom of the tray does have a little bit of water. So, you know, as the days come to the 7 to 10 days, hopefully for germination, there'll be plenty of moisture coming up underneath, and we won't have to come back out here and mess with it at all. And of course, try to spill some on yourself. It's always fun. Just nice and gentle watering. Should we lift up underneath, see what we're working with? Perfect. Got a lot of water soaking up underneath. So all we're going to do now is put on the lid, make sure that these labels are in here properly. You might have to turn a couple of them if this is the style you have. But this should just go right on top without any problem. Just make sure it's all secure. You don't want to force it on here. You don't want it to click. You don't want to do anything like that. You just want to make sure it's on. It's up to you about the vents. Sometimes you can open these up if it's getting way too hot and there's a lot of moisture in there. But for right now, I'm going to keep these half ajar. And actually, I'm going to keep them fully closed. And we're just going to go ahead and forget about this. So again, this is all squared away. So from sowing these seeds to getting it in here in the soil, everything here is good to go. Okay, so a little bit about what we have working here. We have a 10-foot long heat mat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this away so you can see. So this is a very thin 10-foot long heat mat. Gets temperatures between 65 and 70 degrees. It takes about 24 hours for it to finally get to its peak temperature. So we're going to go ahead and turn these on today and make sure everything is going, because tonight's supposed to be 17 degrees out as the overnight low. So we want to make sure we get this up and running, get enough heat for the plants here. Now the full spectrum LED lights here, I have 2 of them here set up. These are 45 watt full spectrum LED lights. We're gonna set this for 14-hour run times to make sure that these get plenty of light, plenty of germination. All right, guys, so that wraps up our video here at the Hans Homestead for sowing videos for 2023. So for all the products that we've listed here, so check out the description. We'll have links for all those there. Be sure to tune into our hanging basket video where we're going to start planting our petunias and seeding those and going through the whole process from seedings to transplanting to our hanging baskets for Mother's Day. So tune in for that video, as well as a 360 tour of the greenhouse that we're in right now. Be sure to subscribe and to like our video. Be sure to check back for more home living at the Hans Homestead.